Yeah, I know, I get it. I scare the rats off cheesecake, I make onions cry. It's me. It's me. It's the GOC. Coming to you live to tape 25 feet below the surface of the earth for another episodic YouTube adventure of story time here on Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel for Chaos Corner. We just came out of Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of the legendary Toad's Place. That's right, fans, we're here for story time and book review on the channel. Drop an elbow on that like button. Say hello to my mods, Austin Nance and the OTS Tribal Queen. Drop an elbow on that like button. Share, subscribe, leave a comment, get us in the algorithm, man. Let's jump right into it. Chapter 3, Billy Joel, U2, and much more. I can't thank you guys and gals enough for being here. This means a lot to me, my personal connection, the area where I grew up, went to college, the whole 9 yards. Where I worked, you guys know that. Go back and check out the monologues, Chapter 1, Chapter 2. We're going to be doing this throughout the entire Christmas season, holiday season into 2025. Here we go. Again, remember, we're reading this together for the very first time. The book was published in 2021 by co-owner, manager, my former boss, Brian Phelps, and of course, legendary New Haven columnist, Connecticut columnist, Randall Beach. Sit back and relax. Here we go. The GOC, that's me. One day in July 1980, promoter Jimmy Koplik was becoming a good friend of ours. Got a starting phone call. Billy Joel wanted to play at a club for a live album, Songs in the Attic. He was making at that time. Koplik came through for us, telling Joel's guy that Toad's was where Joel should do the show. At that time, Joel was known around the world for his catchy songs, evocative lyrics, and dynamic performances. He had his breakthrough in 1973 with his Piano Man album featuring the title track, Captain Jack will get you high tonight. Captain Jack will get you by tonight, however it goes, Captain Jack. He followed it with Street Life Serenade the next year. Then The Stranger in 1977 and 52nd Street in 1978. The Stranger Serenade. The next year, The Stranger. Wait, I'm repeating myself here. The Stranger had 4 hits. She's always a woman to me. Dun, 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 dun. I gotta do my impressions here. I know it's not the best, but that's why you're here. So you're better off when you walked out than when you walked in. So you actually learned something. So you can carry on a fucking conversation at your next concert, venue, dinner party, gathering, work, water cooler, bar, pub, restaurant. You get it. Also, I love you just the way you are. Don't go changing to try to please me. Don't change the color of your hair. I don't imagine you're too familiar. I love you just the way you are. No, leave a comment on my impersonations, man. Too much? Too soon? Also on that same album, 'Cause I'm Moving Out, Anthony's song. He had a Cadillac, a heart attack, you ought to know by now. 'Cause if I'm moving up, I'm moving out. Something like that. My mind's like a lazy Susan. It'll come back around. Also, only the good die young, yeah. I'd rather laugh with the sinners than cry with the saints. The sinners have much more fun, 'cause only the good die young. No? I'm trying here, man. Imagine all that on one album. You look back at it. Again, I already talked about Piano Man, the album, Street Life, Serenade, The Stranger in 77, 52nd Street in 78, and The Stranger with these songs. She's Always a Woman, Just the Way You Are, Moving Out, Only the Good Die Young. Billy Joel, who personally is one of the few that I've never seen or worked for or worked with. And I regret that to this day. One of many regrets in my life. And people who say that are full of goo if they don't say they don't have regrets. It's not saying you admit to anything. It's just telling you the truth. But Billy Joel, from what I understand from people who have been there and worked his shows, one of the greatest performers ever for a live show, a la the Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, of that ilk of performers that were above and beyond and gave you 2.5, 3.5 hour shows. And think of those legends and where they ended up. That's what makes Toad's Place unique, different than many, many venues across this country, from New York City to California. All right, let's focus here, Chaos. But in the summer of 1980, he decided he wanted to record a live album in a variety of venues, ranging from Madison Square Garden to intimate clubs such as ours. Remember, this is Brian Phelps talking. In his liner notes, linear notes, whatever you want to say, potato, potato, tomato, tomato, for that album, Joel wrote that it was a presentation of older material in a concert setting, which I always refer to as songs in the attic. Some songs were recorded in 300-seat clubs. Ambiance was essential in capturing the original spirit. It puts us in close personal contact with a small but intense group of people. Koplik knew Toads could give Joel that small but intense group of people. We also lucked out because that summer Joel was scheduled to be in Connecticut to do 2 shows at the Hartford Civic Center, who, as we previously mentioned in Chapter 2 on the last episode here of Chaos Corner, whose caved-in roof had been repaired by then. Both of the shows quickly sold out. About 33,000 people moved fast to buy tickets. Those performances were going to be on a Friday and a Saturday. So we scheduled the initial secret performance to happen on the following Wednesday and Thursday, July 9th and 10th of 1980. Now, at that point, I'm 17 years old, just graduating high school and heading off to college right there by Yale. Hence, hanging out on Broadway, the Oxford Ale House, the Agora Ballroom, the Great American Music Hall, Cutler's Record Rack. Just, I don't want to talk about Skull and Bones, please. I'm not a part of that, but I am well aware. Okay, let's not get crazy here. YouTube's already had their foot on my throat for 6 months. We advertised the band for those shows as the Dakota 5 in order to keep the lid on this for at least a few days. The whole week was very stressful. We were all nervous about the Piano Man coming, and just about anything could go wrong. Was there anything we hadn't thought of? Joel got into New Haven on Monday, July 7th, 1980. He came to Toads that night to see a show we booked with the Manhattan Transfer, a sellout. Let me adjust here. I gotta represent. Joel was a fan of that band, and he went down to the dressing room, as I said, which was downstairs, to speak with some of them. The dressing rooms left a lot to be desired, but the history right there, throughout the whole hallways of the merch stand down towards the bathrooms, the latrines, if you will, into the dressing room areas on both sides, all kinds of signatures from every famous band and person that ever went there and hung out there and performed there, as my name is on those walls. I'm very proud of that. It's just a signature, but you guys get it. It's being a part of history. Something larger than yourself. That's what it's all about. Being a part, something other than yourself. There's no I in team. After he was done downstairs, he wanted to get back to his hotel in downtown New Haven. I offered to give him a ride, and he jumped into my car. Joel was beside me in the passenger seat. His security guys were seated behind us. I was a little nervous, so I made small talk by pointing out some of the Yale landmarks. "I'll enjoy working with you," he said. I knew he was going to be around for a second day, so I asked him if he wanted to do anything while he was in New Haven. He said no, he was all set. I don't blame you. Better make sure you're strapped in that area. Although we had booked one of the hottest performers of the day, we had a problem with ticket sales for the Joel shows. Mike simply could not keep the secret. I could hear him on the phone. "Don't tell anyone," he said. "This is top secret. No one knows. Billy Joel is coming to Toads." He probably told 50 people or more, and you know those 50 people told all of their close friends. I'll let Jim Koplick jump in here. Alexa, play Tropical Thunderstorm sounds for this. "Those shows almost got canceled because of Mike," he explains. "We hadn't initially said it was Billy Joel." Stand by, fans. "It was going to be announced on 99.1, the classic rock station, the legendary station here, formerly Smith and Barber, now Chaz and AJ, WPLR. But when I got there outside Toads on the morning of the first show, there was a line of about 100 people out the sidewalk. I went upstairs and I asked Brian and Mike, 'Why are they online?' Brian said, 'I don't know.' Mike said, 'I don't know.' So I went back down to the sidewalk and I asked the people, 'Who are you here to buy tickets for?' And they all said Billy Joel. And I asked the people, 'Who told you?' They all said Mike told me," co-owner Mike Spernoodle. "I went back upstairs and I said, 'Mike, you know I love you, but your friends aren't all going to buy tickets before the general public. You know that, right?' 'That's not right.' So we told everybody on the sidewalk to go home. And we set up a new ticket site at a trailer near Long Wharf in New Haven's harbor area a couple of miles away. And they did the ticket sales." Let me show you a few more pictures here of Jimmy Koplick, Little Feat, Big Al from NRBQ, Chick Corea, Extreme, John Entwistle, Ingwe Malmsteen, who I have a personal connection to and hung out on his tour bus with my old buddy from the MVP project, Michael Becerra, the lead singer, as Ingwe was his guitar player. What a night. What nights those were. Ingwe Malmsteen, one of the best guitarists on the planet, in the order of Eddie Van Halen, Stevie Vai, so on and so forth. And let me show you a few photos here. Chuck Mangione, U2, if you could see them. I want you guys to enjoy this. Let me see here. You'll have to see my mug as well, if you could recognize any of these folks. I know my fingers are in the way. Just to give you a little glossary here of some of the photos of all the... There's the Toad, man! There's Chuck Mangione. This is beautiful. This is history, man. That's why I present it to you. And, of course, my connection to it. Stand by. Don't go anywhere, man. We're only on Chapter 3. We're going to be here for a little while. Austin, are you here? Jen? Merry Christmas to you. Brian, guys down, gals down at Toads, I hope you're checking these out. I know I'm giving a little extra, but it's the Guardian of Chaos. It's what I do. Let's continue here. The legendary Toads place. We then put Koplick Plan B into action. WPLR announced Billy Joe was going to play 2 shows at Toads, and you can get tickets only at the trailer. Everybody raced down to Long Wharf, and of course both shows sold out almost immediately. The people who scored those tickets acted like they won the lottery. We sold only 460 tickets for each night. Remember, the capacity's 750, but Keep this to yourself. Well over 1,000 people on many a nights for these shows were jammed to capacity. Trust me when I tell you. Right away, those who had gotten tickets for the first night came right back to the sidewalk outside Toads to wait for the doors to open. A crew sometimes was used for A-team security was brought in to surround Joel. The bouncers patrolling outside were wearing buttons that said, "It's not rock and roll, it's a big hassle." And it sure was a hassle for anybody in line who tried to get inside with a recording device or camera. Photographers who had been assigned to cover the show for the New Haven Register and other media outlets were forced to smuggle in their equipment, strapping lenses and other apparatus around their legs and stomach. But after they got in and started shooting, they were yanked from the crowd by those security guys, and their film was confiscated. As the Register reported, Billy Joel doesn't like having his picture taken. The newspaper ended up using an old publicity shot. When bouncing in security was security, those were the good old days. You guys know my resume. Metallica, LL Cool J, Jimmy Buffett, Rod Stewart, so on and so forth. Bobby Brown, New Edition, Big Daddy Kane, Slick Rick, De La Soul. I mean, Pat Travers, REO Speedwagon. I could go on and on and on, including at places like Daniel's Discotheque, Montego Bay, Penrod's, the Candy Store, the Button, the Elbow. That's right, from coast to coast and pillar to post. And of course, Toad's Place, New Haven Coliseum, the Meadows, the Hartford Civic Center. It really was incredible. The one place I didn't get a chance to work security, or even as private security or a bodyguard, was Madison Square Garden. Another one of my regrets. Where were we? Randall Beach, who's also co-author of this book. The New Haven Register, rock and roll reviewer, reported on that first night. Scalpers added to the fun, offering to sell $7.50 tickets for $50. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, and compare it as you put it into the inflation calculator of what it would cost now. Here in the summer of 1980, and this was considered top price for a ticket, $7.50, and they were scalping them for $50. Now you can't scratch your sister's ass for $50. I don't have a sister, so I could say that. Groupies in cowboy boots and shiny tight pants anxiously awaited outside a side door which accepted only VIPs and roadies. Cops wandered up and down the line of ticket holders announcing through megaphones, "Don't push forward, you'll crush everybody ahead of you." Here's more from Beach's review. At 9:45 p.m., the band came out and Joel followed, smoking a cigarette and bouncing around the stage in his trademark sport coat, jeans, and tie. Already cranked up, the crowd erupted as Joel tore into his new hit single, "You may be right, I may be crazy, but it's just a lunatic you're looking for. Turn out the lights, because you may be right, and I may be crazy." What, man? I gotta do it. It's a part of the atmosphere here in Chaos Corner. Woo! No, it's not Ric Flair. I'm just doing woo because I felt it in my emotions just now. Joel, then 31 in 1980, who had been a boxer as a teenager, was bobbing and weaving as he performed. This was the great thing about having Joel at Toads and why it was such a treat for that lucky audience. You saw everything up close. As Beach noted, after seeing Joel in his usual big arena venues, it's a revelation to watch him from only a few feet away. You can see the defiant expressions on his face, the sloppy grins, the sweat on his brow. The guy sweated up such a storm that he needed to wipe it away with a towel after every song. His entire face put out like Dick Nixon's upper lip. I shall not tell a lie. Dick Nixon, history. The crowd was loving it, but there were some hassles as the bouncers' buttons had warned. During those shows, spurred on by those zealous security guys and Billy Joel, during "You Had to Be a Big Shot, Did You? You had to open up your mouth. You had to be a big shot, did you? All the boys were so knocked out. You had to have the last word last night. 'Cause you had to be a big shot last night. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh, oh, whoa, whoa." What a song. Billy Joel popped his Molson like he was uncorking a bottle of champagne and sprayed it all over the stage. A wise guy in the crowd decided to do the same thing with his beer bottle, and he got immediately thrown out by one of those A-team dudes. The security guy just wasn't in the mood, and it was the end of the night for that unfortunate fan who thought it would be funny to imitate his idol. Another tense moment came after the crowd had exuberantly sung along with "The Piano Man." No, I'm not going to sing along. Joel's autobiographical remembrance of performing in California's cocktail lounges. Say that 3 times fast. Shortly afterwards, some idiot yelled out, "Piano Man!" Joel stopped the show, looked around, got off his piano stool, and walked over to the edge of the stage toward that poor fool. Joel looked at him and said, "We already did that song. Where were you? Did you go out and take a piss or something?" Then he walked back to his stool and continued the set. But this showed you something our club's intimacy could bite you in the ass if you did something stupid. During the first show, there was a glitch with the sound system. When Joel lit into "The Entertainer," static hit the Moog synthesizer. Joel stopped the song, cursed, and started the song all over again. Although Joel was at the peak of his career, you could tell he had a chip on his shoulder when it came to rock critics. A writer from the Rolling Stone had dissed him as a particularly obnoxious frat boy who's hoisted a few too many while trying to put the make on an airline stewardess. Pardon my linguistic skills. We're reading this together for the very first time. You know that, right? I've never read this before. So not bad for the very first time. Live with you guys. And so Joel reminded the Toads crowd that his album Glass Houses was #1 in America. And he said in a deadpan tone, "Thank you, Rolling Stone." Joel covered several rock and roll classics during those 2 nights that could never make it onto that live album, including Mustang Sally. Doo doo. What a great song that was. Remake, Mustang Sally. Hold On, I'm Coming. I said, hold on, I'm coming. Another classic remake. In the Midnight Hour, another classic song. And a somewhat obscure Beatles song, I'll Cry Instead. The crowd played ball with it, but they were there to hear Joel originals. They got really excited and we pulled out his big hits, My Life, Big Shot, and it's still rock and roll to me. Between those numbers, the crowd yelled, "Billy, Billy, Billy." Those shows clocked in at about 2 hours and 15 minutes. From Beach's review of the first night, the encores lasted until midnight when he slapped all extended hands, shouted, "Don't take any shit from anybody," grabbed his beer, and dashed off the stage. The song from those shows that made it onto Songs of the Addict, produced by Phil Ramone, was the little-known Los Angelinos. But there it was, the 4th cut on side 1 with the notation recorded July 1980, Toads Place, New Haven, Connecticut. I hope your notebooks are still out. When it begins, you hear the low, expectant hum of our crowd from the people coming alive as the band kicks in and Joel sings, "Los Angelinos all come from somewhere." 5 months later, on December 14th, 1980, a band came into our club that would go on to become superstars of the same magnitude as Billy Joel. Notebooks out, pay attention. But at that time, virtually nobody outside of Ireland or England knew about a young band out of Dublin called U2. They weren't even our lead act. They were openers for a band called Baruga. I know what you're asking. Who? That was only the 8th show U2 had ever done in North America. They were promoting their first album, Boy, which was new and almost unknown in America. Boy, indeed. They were so young that two of them, the drummer Larry Mullen and the lead guitarist David Howell Evans, also known as The Edge, were still teenagers, as was I at that time. They were 19 years old. Bassist Adam Clayton and lead singer Bono, a.k.a. Paul David Hewson, that's right, Bono, Paul David Hewson, were 20. If they had walked in off the street, we'd have carded them before serving them a beer. And remember, the drinking age was only 18 at the time. When U2 came into Toads, the world, especially the musical world, was in shock. John Lennon had been assassinated the week before in New York. England was in mourning for its native son, and America was shattered that an icon who had moved to the U.S. had been killed here. Either people were too depressed to go out to hear music, or U2 was too obscure. But whatever the reason, only about 100 people showed up on the first night when we had them. Koplik, who was involved with booking the show, said he paid the band 100 U2, whatever, UK dollars in UK. That's what it says here in the book. I'm just giving you the facts, man. I give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. One man, unique, unedited, unscripted, raw dog for you, the fans. And I'll say that to say this, because I tell it like it is. He was supposed to perform at the Arcadia Ballroom, located about a mile down the road from Toads, and a competitor of ours in the 70s and early 80s before it went out of business. But their booking fell through. Bono wasn't in a good mood that first time we had him. First, he got into an altercation with one of the Baruga guys. They almost had a fist fight before we could get them under control. And then during the show, when Bono called out for 11 o'clock tick-tock, Mullen didn't come on because he was on the floor trying to reposition his drums, which had slid forward. Bono got upset and threw part of the drum kit into the crowd. Bono clearly felt guilty about this for a long time. 3 years later, in an interview with Beach and the New Haven Register before U2 did a sellout show at the New Haven Coliseum, he said he still felt ashamed about what had happened. I lost my voice and things were very wrong on stage. That's what he said. That's what Bono said. Then I threw the drum kit into the audience. The energy level got a bit out of hand, to quote Bono. I didn't sleep well that night, Bono continued. The next morning I walked the University of Yale, talking to people who'd seen the show and apologizing. Sometimes when you try to break through the barrier between yourself and the audience, you fall into the audience. Music should break down barriers, not build them. When U2 returned to Toads on May 27, 1981, they still weren't well known in America. For that show, they only drew about 100 people, a couple of hundred people this second time. The band played 17 songs, starting with The Ocean and ending with Twilight, I Will Follow, A Day Without Me, and Fire as encores. 6 months later, on November 15th, 1981, when U2 came back for their third and final show at Toads, that's right, U2 played 3 times at Toads in the early 80s. Word had gotten out that they were something special. We were filled to capacity at 750 people. This time they performed 15 songs, ending with a reprise encore of I Will Follow. U2 rolled back into New Haven in May of 1983. We lost out to Yale on that one. The band performed at the domed and historic Wolsey Hall, which had earlier hosted shows by Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix. That's what you get here in the Constitution State, in the greater New England tri-state Northeast area, in the shadows of Titan Towers, in this historic area where I went to college, hung out on the green, bounced. Unbelievable. That's the connection here. I can't thank Toads and Brian, Tank and Whiskey and everybody involved with Toads down there. All the bands and the bands that I worked for at that club when I wasn't even working there. I'm truly humbled, honored, and blessed to be a small part, an insignificant cog in the wheel in the history of Toad's Place, but nonetheless still a part of something bigger than myself, which is what it's really all about at times, is it not? Being a part of something bigger than you. I know I've repeated that and said that already. Koplik, who booked that U2 performance, recalled, "I told Bono, don't stand on the box or we're all dead. That's America's largest pipe organ. So on the first song, he dances on the pipe organ with his big boots. That was one of the worst moments of my life. Later that night after the show, Yale maintenance people checked it out. Thankfully, it wasn't broken." 1 month after the Yale show, U2 was in New Haven yet again. But this time they were performing at the legendary New Haven Coliseum. They had moved beyond the club circuit, but we had bragging rights. We got them first, and not just once, but 3 times. A few years after those U2 shows, the band, now easily filling arenas, came back to Connecticut to play the Hartford Civic Center. After one of their songs, Bono asked the crowd, "Does anybody know Toads?" And people let out a big roar of approval. That was a Toads shout-out I'll always remember. Koplik, whose cross-country concerts was booking all the major acts at the New Haven Coliseum and the Hartford Civic Center, was also becoming a key connection for us. Koplik said it worked like this. 99% of the shows at Toads were booked by Toads, Catherine Blossom, and Lucy Sabini. Those were their bookers. It's impressive the girl power the club had back in the 70s and 80s. I would bring in my level of artists, Billy Joel, Dylan, the Stones. It was such a great club. Mike and Brian taught me about quality. Mike would replace the floor every couple of years. I told him, "Mike, you don't need to do that." But he said, "You got to do it every few years or it becomes a stale club." And he was right. And remember, the floors at Toads were floors that were removed and brought into Toads that were old basketball courts. Wooden, hardwood basketball courts. The hardwood floor, so to speak. That was the dance floor and the flooring in front of the stage. Incredible, right? Who thought of things like that? Toads Place did. That's why it's the legendary Toads. Whatever we were doing seemed to be working. We were pulling in some interesting acts. One of our early shows in the 1980s, on March 26, 1980, was an up-and-coming band that would soon hit it big. The Pretenders. This was 4 months after their first album, The Pretenders, was released in America. They were a British-American band. The album had some hits on it like Brass in Pocket and a cover of Kink's song, Stop Your Sobbing. But our ticket sales for that show were only so-so, and we decided to offer admission for about $2 to anybody with a Yale ID. Once we did that, we packed the place with 715 bodies. Lead singer Chrissie Hynde was wearing a Dallas Cowboys shirt. With the energy from all the Yaleys in the crowd, the hand got into it and put on a memorable performance. The band, not the hand. The band, not the hand. 3 months after the Pretenders, we had a well-known veteran band, John Kay and Steppenwolf, came in for a first of several appearances. They, of course, played Born to Be Wild, dun, 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 and Magic Carpet Ride. I like to dream. Dun, dun, dun. Two unbelievable songs, am I right? Born to Be Wild, Magic Carpet Ride. And people were loving it. This was a fun summer show. As fall rolled around, we booked a band that didn't have much of a following yet. Huey Lewis and the News came to Toads in September of that year. We might have had all of 50 to 100 people at the start of their show. And when they finished, there were 4 people left sitting at the same table. It was kind of sad. And so I went downstairs to the dressing room and gave Huey and the guys a pep talk. No, he didn't say, I want a new drug. One that won't spill. One that don't cost too much or come in a pill. I want a new drug. One that won't ache my head, something like that. One that won't make my mouth too dry or my eyes too red. I can't help myself, man. Somebody help me. Somebody stop me. Not you. I don't need anything from the peanut gallery. Woo, this is a long chapter here, Chapter 3. Billy Joel, U2, and much more. Chapter 3 of the legendary Toad's Place. Stories from an unbelievable famed music venue. Don't worry about it, I said. You guys played great. This happens sometimes. Soon you'll be on an upward swing. It turned out I was right. Within a year, they were playing to a sellout crowd of over 16,000 at the Hartford Civic Center. And Huey didn't forget us. He came back to Toads after he started doing the arena shows. That's loyalty. Not all the acts we booked were on to make it big, but we made a point to book a wide variety of performers. You never knew what you might encounter when you walked into Toads, kind of like when you walk in here to Chaos Corner. I'm Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel. One of our strangest dudes was Captain Beefheart, originally named Don Van Vliet. Why did he change his name? I have a beef in my heart against the world, he said. Beefheart and his magic band came into Toads on a cold Sunday night in December of 1980. Beach, who was there that night covering the show, reported Beefheart kept the crowd waiting for longer than usual, holding them hostage with a recording of what sounded like a pack of wild dogs and Confucius singing in the shower. And you know what Confucius say? Man who go to bed with squirrel, wake up with cracked nuts. Man or woman who go to bed with itchy ass, wake up with smelly finger. I'm just saying, that's what Confucius said. I didn't say it. Beefheart and his magic band, as I said, December of 1980. When Beefheart finally walked onto the stage, dressed in a black suit, black hat, black shirt, with a large and long orange scarf draped around his neck, he was carrying a bag full of harmonicas. Between songs, he meticulously combed a fireman's hat, explaining, I'm trying to keep up with the new wave. For 90 minutes, he and his band delivered demented poetry, oddball songs such as Making Love to a Vampire with a Monkey on My Knee, an Ashtray Heart. I'm not making this up, guys. This is what it says. Many people in the crowd were getting into it, bobbing around and swaying on the weird rhythms. But somebody was overheard saying, what are they clapping for? I don't understand. Beefheart was so ornery that he insulted one of our lighting guys. Out! Out! That red light's too damn hot. Turn that damn light out. Did you go to college? Then he went to banging the gongs he'd brought with him. I'm speechless, said a member of the audience at the end of the night. A lot of us shared that reaction, but we all got a night we would never forget. We still have an autographed photo of Beefheart. In addition to his signature, he wrote this message. There are 40 people in the world, and 20 of them are hamburgers. I never knew what the hell that meant. Yep, 1980 was an odd year coming on the heels of the far out 70s. In April that year, we brought in Flo and Eddie, the remnants of the Turtles. So happy together. And It Ain't Me, Babe. Howard Kalin, aka Eddie, and Mark Volman, aka Flo, arrived without a band but backed up by a booming sound system that delivered the theme song to the movie King of Kings. Their stage act combined comedy, bizarre music, and a Turtles slideshow. Somehow it worked. The crowd recognized King of Kings and applauded it. During the encore, with that song blaring, Flo and Eddie stood in comic reverence, holding guitars and stuffed animals over their heads, quoting Kalin, "It's a lot safer working with stuffed animals than stuffed musicians." We're 40 minutes in. Don't go anywhere. Chapter 3 here on the legendary Toad's Place. The crowd was not so receptive to the poet-punk musician Jim Carroll, who brought his band to Toad's in March of 1981. We took a chance with that booking, knowing he had a single, People Who Died, off the album, Catholic Boy, that was getting some airplay, but our crowd didn't dig him and he got booed. And then we got Iggy Pop. The punk legend came to us for the first time on August 9th, 1981. He and the band toured through 14 songs, starting with Raw Power, going on to do Lust for Life, Search and Destroy, and ending with Dog Food, and a cover of the seminal theme song, Gloria. The crowd was literally eating it up. Iggy returned on October 18th, 1982, a month after releasing his album, Zombie Birdhouse. He bellowed, "I feel like a horse," as he introduced the horse song from that album. From Beach's review of that show, the pop heads in the audience in chains and leather were slam dancing into one another by evening's end. Pop leered over them, taunting, spitting, sweating, and parading back and forth in black tunic and pink tights. He was 35 by then, odd for a punk rocker, but still there were scratch marks on his chest and hickeys on his arm. Iggy crawled around the stage while singing Watching the News, another new cut from his album, I Want to Be Known. He shouted, "I want to be on the news." During the encore, as Iggy performed Bang Bang, a few of his devotees tried to climb onto the stage. Roadies pushed them back into the crowd. Iggy, who had donned a turquoise Chanel bathrobe with red trim for the finale, giggled and swaggered as he watched his wasted and fervent fans. The month after Iggy Pop's first show with us, we landed Joan Jett. Also her first time with us. She fit in perfectly with our rock and roll image. Her big song, I love rock and roll, so put another dime in the jukebox, baby. I love rock and roll. Won't you come and take a dance with me? Was exactly the way everyone at Toad's felt. But Jett was one of those performers who hadn't yet been discovered. So we only had 380 people there for that fun show. In the middle of acts such as Iggy Pop and Joan Jett, we brought in Buddy Rich, one of the most famous drummers of all time. Rich was closer to being a jazz musician than a rocker, but his talent transcended genres. Say that 5 times fast, not even 3 times. Remember, we're reading this together for the first time. I have to remind you of that, so bear with me in my linguistic skills, as I always say. Remember, when I do the book reviews here, or story time, it's generally things that I've never read before, and for the first time, I read them live, ad lib, with you here. As I said, Rich was closer to being a jazz musician than a rocker, but his talent transcended genres. Mike and I had talked about booking him when we saw he was out on the road, and we figured, hey, let's do it. This guy's a classic. So what if it's not rock and roll? The drummers in the audience wanted to kiss his feet. This was the only show my father ever came to see at Toad's. 2 months later, in October of 1981, we booked another legendary old schooler, Dizzy Gillespie. The audience was treated to his jazzy horn sound. The way his cheeks blew up with every note like a blowfish was amazing. When the show was over and the band gathered downstairs, I got a clue as to maybe why they called him Dizzy. I don't think they had a tour manager. They were trying to figure out how they're going to get their next show, which is in Chattanooga. How are we going to get there? Chattanooga, Tennessee. It quickly became clear they had no idea how to do it. Nobody seemed to know who was leading the way. They were all just looking at each other. I decided to step in and give them a hand with the navigation. I got them train tickets, and later I heard they made it to Chattanooga. Later the following year, in September of 1982, we were able to bring in another revered performer from the big band era. Renowned jazz pianist Count Basie and his orchestra. We did 2 shows and both sold out. We offered about 600 tickets for each performance. The Count, whose bandmates called him Holy Man, or simply Holy, was in a wheelchair and couldn't stand at that point. We had to install a ramp to get him on stage. Decades later, people are still talking about that show. The Count died less than 2 years later on April 26, 1984. Sometimes we would be able to book acclaimed members of big groups that had broken up. In February of 1981, we had Roger McGuinn and Chris Hillman, formerly of the Byrds. McGuinn had a huge grin during the Sunday night show when the crowd roared its approval for the opening song, Don't You Write Her Off, from his new album. But inevitably, the audience saved its biggest reception for Byrds oldies, Turn and Turn and Turn, as well as Mr. Spaceman, Mr. Tambourine Man, and 8 Miles High. And so, you want to be a rock and roll star. 2 months later, we had another former Byrd, David Crosby. He strolled on stage along that Tuesday night, alone, carrying an acoustic guitar. Hearing an affectionate ovation, he grinned and said, "You guys must have seen I'm having a good time before I ever got here." And they were having a good time long before he ever got there, if you were familiar and down at Toad's. That was an intimate and a revealing evening. "I'm always nervous when I first come out," he said. "I'm never sure if I'm going to be able to do that guitar lick." Several times before he started the song, we could hear him mutter to himself, "Good luck, Dave." He grumbled that his record company, Capitol, wouldn't put out his latest album titled, "You Might As Well Have Had a Good Time." They don't like it because it isn't enough like Devo or Elvis Costello, he told the audience. It wasn't the music of the 80s. Still, he performed several tunes from that album. But he also pleased the crowd by doing Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young standards, including Wooden Ships, Deja Vu, and Guinevere. Speaking of deja vu, I have amnesia and deja vu at the same time. I think I've forgotten this before. As Beach said in his review, those were the highlights of the show. Crosby was so pleased by the applause that he reacted like a struggling newbie, saying, "You liked it?" Crosby also marveled at the audience's rapt attention during his songs and at the respectful silence between some of the numbers. "Wow," he said, "a quiet spot where nobody yelled, 'Boogie!' or 'Where's Neil?'" He was seeing that a Toad's crowd is something special. But after he left the stage, Crosby reminded us he can't be moody and stubborn. He refused to come back for an encore despite a prolonged, tumultuous plea from the crowd. He remained downstairs, his door shut, and guarded by one of our security guys. When he refused to speak to reporters, one of Crosby's associates explained, "David's going through some personal problems right now." That spring of 1982 was also memorable because the English progressive rock band King Crimson came in to do 3 shows in the space of 2 days. All of them sold out. The band, led by Robert Fripp, was best known for its 1969 debut album, In the Court of the Crimson King. The song list for March 4th was 14 numbers, began with Frippertronics, and ended with Larks, Tongues and Aspic, and Part 2. Those aren't well known in popular culture circles, trust me when I tell you, but the cultists who were there are still talking about the Toad's visit. We're going on for a while here. We're almost up on an hour. Bear with me, fans. Bear with me. Don't go anywhere. Just checking out what we have here. And then we'll wrap this up and we'll come back with part 2 of Chapter 3. We still have a distance to go. I don't want to keep you guys on any of these shows for more than an hour. It's just not fair to you, although I can go on for 2 or 3 hours. If we were live instead of live to tape, which is actually live, I'd probably do a 2-hour show. Fripp came back in March of 1983 for a solo show. He was an oddball. I said hello to him and he just stared at me. Then we were told, don't talk to him. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. He also didn't want any cameras in the club. He put that in the rider of his contract about 20 times. Despite all that, he was a master on stage with his guitar workmanship. He was a genius. We just said, okay, you're above us, not a problem. Anyway, very few clubs can say they had the full band of King Crimson. Hold on, fans. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back with Chapter 3, The Legendary Toad's Place, Billy Joel, U2, and much more. I'll say that to say this because I tell it like it is. Don't you dare miss it.